What's happening, y'all? Welcome inside the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Danny, Bush, and Angelo coming at you to bring you the ideal landing spots for all of the top running back prospects in the 2022 NFL Draft. If you guys checked out Thursday's video, we did this for wide receivers with PFF's Trevor Sikkema. Today, we're joined by Angelo to talk about some running backs today. Interesting conversation. We're going to be talking a lot about these guys throughout the entire draft process. You guys have heard most of our thoughts on them. We figured we'd get a fresh set of eyes talking about his thoughts on the running back class. So, Angelo, I'll let you introduce yourself, tell people where they can find you, and then we'll get right into this.
Yeah, absolutely. First, thanks for having me on again. I really appreciate it, man. I'm excited to chop it up about these backs. Well, you can find pretty simply on Twitter at Angelo_fantasy. And then on my website, angeloanalysis.com. Those are where all the threads, the profiles are. As well as the Ascension grading system, which grades out these backs both on film and analytically. So it's an exciting time of the year. I mean, we're 18 days or so until the NFL draft. So we're finally going to get to learn these guys' landing spots.
Yeah, exactly. That's the fun part about this. Obviously, we can, him and haw about these guys' draft capital, but once we actually get down to the brass tacks of where they're going, that's when the fun begins. So if you guys enjoyed this video at any point, you guys know what to do. Hit the like button, comment any of your thoughts down below, maybe your favorite match make that you have for yourself, and subscribe to the channel if you're new as well. We're about 400 subscribers away from 10,000 right now. We are trying to get there before the NFL draft. So if you haven't already done so, please hit the subscribe button. And of course, if you want more Dynasty and rookie content, our Patreon is linked in the description as well. Now, without further ado, let's hit the intro. Rules for this exercise basically are that you can only use each team and player once. So we're going to talk about the top running backs in order of grinding the Mox ADP and talk about where we have the match made, their ideal fit, their ideal landing spot, and then move on to the next guy. So we're going to start with the consensus running back one, Breece Hall from Iowa State. In my opinion, the best landing spot for Breece Hall is the place where he's going to get the most volume. And the reason I say that is because he was a workhorse in college. I think he's going to be a workhorse in the NFL. So to me, that landing spot, given about where he's going to go in the NFL draft, grinding the mocks has him at 41.7 in terms of his overall ADP. I think the best spot for him is the Houston Texans because they have absolutely no running backs of note on the roster. Breece Hall would walk into that situation at pick 37 in the NFL draft and be the go-to guy for that team. They need to add pieces around Davis Mills. They need to add pieces around potentially their future quarterback if they're looking towards the 2023 class. So I like Breece Hall to the Houston Texans to become their workhorse back at pick 37.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think it's interesting because a guy like Breece Hall could go anywhere, I think, from, late day one, I think, to day two. So for me, I actually have him going to the Eagles in a trade up in the second round. I think they need a 3-down caliber runner. I think Sirianni needs that for his offense schematically to work the way he wants it to work, with how much success they had on the ground last year without one of those guys. I mean, they ran at the highest rate in the league last year. And I think they actually want a piece that fits the mold of a 3-down back, one that can hit the home run, one that can be an adequate receiver, and one that can protect Jalen Hurts when he needs to. And that's what Breece Hall kind of fits. Breece Hall is my number one running back in this class, bar none. And I think that will be a really interesting fit, especially with Miles Sanders coming up on the end of his rookie contract and them unlikely to extend that.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because we offhandedly, off recording, have mentioned a couple of times that the surprise team for Breece Hall that we haven't really been talking about has been the Eagles because of their situation with Miles Sanders, because of their propensity to want that guy to shoulder the load. So I'll get into my Eagles spot or Eagles player a little later. I think that's also a very good spot. Same with Houston. For my spot for Breece Hall, I mean, round one draft capital is what we start for in the fantasy community. Offensive installation is what we start for in the fantasy community. And the team that fits both of those criteria that could be in the market for a bell cow running back would be the Buffalo Bills at 25th overall. I mean, if we're talking about just a straight projectable offensive situation, like, can you name 5 offenses in the NFL we expect to be more successful than the Buffalo Bills? You'd be hard-pressed to find that. And getting a runner, getting a receiver, getting a dual threat running back that can affect the game in multiple facets the way Breece Hall can. I mean, this is a team that doesn't have too many needs as it is. If they want to go luxury, if they want to take a running back at 25th overall, I think Breece Hall would be an RB1 right off the bat with this team. So as a result, if we're talking about dream fantasy landing spots, like give me the one where he could legitimately score 300 fantasy points as a rookie.
Yeah, like you got 15 plus touchdown upside as a rookie with that type of offense. They have guys there, but they haven't really worked out to the extent that they probably hoped. Devin Singletary played pretty well down the stretch last year, but they could still want to upgrade that position. Like you said, they don't have a whole lot of needs. I think everybody would probably agree with Danny's landing spot as like the dream fit, the ideal fit for Breece Hall. I personally lean towards the side of volume with Breece Hall because we know that's how he made his hay at Iowa State at being a workhorse. And I do think we talked about it, like Danny said, with Breece Hall, the Philadelphia Eagles, back when they had 3 first-round picks before the trade with the Saints, there was a chance that you got all that first-round draft capital.
Yeah.
The best player on the board could have been, your number 1 running back, which we had to assume would have been Breece Hall. And if he went like top 20 in the NFL draft, then obviously he would have been, bar none, the 101 in rookie draft. So let's move on from Breece Hall and get to the consensus RB2 for the most part. I think most people would have this guy RB2, 53.7 overall per grinding the mocks, Kenneth Walker from Michigan State. I have him actually to the Buffalo Bills because I don't think the Buffalo Bills would spend their first round pick on a running back. I have him going, around pick 57, or they maybe have to trade up in the second round to go get him. Kenneth Walker, I think he fits that scheme because I think Devin Singletary has developed well into a third down back and well into like a complementary piece. Kenneth Walker, we know, doesn't have the receiving profile necessary to indicate that he's a true 3-down back at the next level. He also struggled in pass protection in college. So having those other guys there, Singletary, Moss, those other guys that can protect Josh Allen on third down and contribute as a pass catcher while Kenneth Walker develops that part of his game, I think would be a good fit for him. And obviously with Kenneth Walker, we know he can take long runs to the house at any time. We know he's very elusive. We know he's good through contact. We know he can score touchdowns. So having an offensive scheme that is tailored towards that kind of play style, and you have a physical runner with Josh Allen at quarterback too to complement that, I really like Kenneth Walker to the Buffalo Bills in the second round if they choose to address the running back position there.
No, yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I think I have actually the same one. I have the Bills too. I think the number one thing is you want to take pressure off Josh Allen around the goal line. He's your superstar quarterback. He's your, he's the shining guy in that organization. So you don't want him taking those hits out on the goal line. You don't want another Cam Newton type situation where his career just comes to a abrupt halt because of injury. And with Josh Allen, he's so good around the goal line that you want someone else to shoulder that load. And I think Kenneth Walker's that guy. I don't know if he's going to fall to 57, but I think they're going to, like you said, I think he's a trade up candidate because he's going to help them so much in the red zone and taking a load off Josh Allen as a rusher.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I mean, we both, or all three of us, actually have one of the top 2 running backs go into that Buffalo Bills situation. So either way, whether it's Breece Hall or Kenneth Walker, I'm sure fantasy managers around the world are going to be very, very happy with that landing spot for either of those 2 backs. The landing spot I actually decided on with Kenneth Walker is the one that Breece Hall was for Bush. The Houston Texans, 37th overall pick, I think makes a ton of sense for Kenneth Walker. If you're talking about a situation, I mean, he can earn his volume over with Houston. Like, there's so much opportunity there. Like, yeah, right now he is not the most profiled receiving back, which I'm sure with experience, with actual reps on the field, is going to help in that regard. So if you're putting him in a situation with Houston where, I mean, I'm not going to call it a lost season for them, but just having a season to see what you can get out of Kenneth Walker, see how you can develop Kenneth Walker and give him a situation where he can be a 20 touch per game type of running back. I mean, 37th overall draft capital, can't argue with that. Can't argue with the volume with Houston.
Yeah, Angelo, we feel like a broken record at this point talking about Kenneth Walker's receiving skill set. What did you see? Because you're more of a film guy. We're more numbers guys, so we focus on the profile. On film, did you see a guy that looks capable on third down? Did you see a guy that can pass protect when he's asked to and can catch the ball when he needs to?
Yeah, I think he can. I think the receiving thing is overblown in my opinion. I think he can be an adequate receiver. When I was watching him at the combine actually run routes and show his hands, you didn't see a guy that was completely inept at doing so. And that's the number one thing is he an above average receiver? Probably not. He's probably average or slightly below, but that's okay. He's not going to be a 50, 60, 70 reception guy in the NFL. 30, 35 receptions might be a ceiling if he gets a 3-down role. And I think he can do that. The thing also is this is his first year at Michigan State in a full workload in terms of role. So the pass protecting, all that stuff, more so at the NFL level, you're teaching different keys and things like that. So that I don't worry about as much as long as he shows the effort and the ability to learn that. You can do that. I think it was a few years ago when Dave Montgomery was a top 3 pass protecting back in this class. And those are some concerns about him coming out of Iowa State. So that can be very well taught. But I'm not really concerned about, Walker's receiving capabilities. Is it going to be a big part of his NFL production? I don't think so, but I don't think it's going to be a wart in his profile.
Right. And I think we saw, even to your point about him just having a full workload this year, we saw with Travis Etienne early on in his college career, when he started getting a full workload, he wasn't a contributing pass catcher. And then once towards the end of his college career, junior and senior season, he became a true threat out of the backfield, at least from a production standpoint. He was very productive from that perspective. So let's get into the final, I would say, tier 1 back of the class. Maybe you guys think the top 2 guys are in a tier of their own after the combine and after the testing that we saw for Isaiah Spiller. But Isaiah Spiller, to me, still belongs in this conversation. I do think the other guys have, kind of surpassed him because of their testing, because, some of the film stuff that we've seen with those guys. But Isaiah Spiller, a guy that I have going to, I think, a system that fits him perfectly in the Atlanta Falcons. I think the Atlanta Falcons are in need of a physical, tough runner like Isaiah Spiller. Isaiah Spiller has, I'm curious, what your thoughts are in terms of his instincts, because it's something that I'm not very comfortable evaluating because I don't have a huge film background. But Isaiah Spiller, to me, when you just look at the peripherals, to me, he's the best receiving production back in this class. He has the best profile from that regard. And he also profiles as the most physical, the best in pass protection as well, from what I saw. So Isaiah Spiller going to the Atlanta Falcons, probably around pick 74 in the 3rd round or something like that, to me makes a ton of sense. I do think this is probably a guy we're talking about in the 3rd round of the NFL draft, probably not the 1st or the 2nd round. What are your thoughts on Spiller's game overall, and where do you have him going?
I think he's an interesting back because he has a lot of the movement tools that you look for in a starting caliber NFL running back. But where he's lacking is in the anticipatory qualities, right? He doesn't anticipate contact well, and he doesn't anticipate openings. Those are the 2 things you have to do to stay on the field in the NFL. We talked a little bit earlier today before the show about Miles Sanders, and that's where he really struggled. The light bulb never turned on for him in that facet, and it was really hurt his career. That can happen. That's in the range of outcomes for Isaiah Spiller, is the game doesn't slow down enough for him from a cognitive perspective, and he gets bogged down into a secondary, or ancillary role. That's my fear. I have him actually going to the Arizona Cardinals and falling to pick 87. I think for me, a secondary role for him to start his career is probably best. I don't see him as a three down back right now. I think he's better off learning and taking a couple years to grow into that role, if that's something that NFL teams project him as. So for me, I'm not super concerned about, I'd say, the upside, but more so the downside of what Isaiah Spiller, could end up being. And also the durability is one thing I take issue with too. When watching full games of A&M, comes out in and out of the games a lot, and that's something too. If you're trying to produce in the NFL, it's next man up. They're not gonna, at A&M, it's okay. You're ready, go back on the field. No, it's in the NFL, you're going to lose a lot of production. You're going to lose playing time. And that's one of my fears with him is he is such a tough runner. I don't think he understands he doesn't need to take those hits. Right. And
little Chris Carson in his game then, from that perspective.
Yeah, exactly. And I think to me, he's the most, I'd say the player that he reminds me the most of is Kenyon Drake, where really good in the open field, but leaves a lot of meat in the bone. There's a big what if guy. I think we have some like Kenyon Drake, Duke Johnson. Those guys were always like, what if? What if they stayed healthy? What if he has a full workload? What if he developed, a better anticipatory skill set? And that's my fear with Spiller. The upside is still there. I have him graded as the highest running back in this class in terms of movement toolbox. I think he's a fantastic mover in the open field, can make anybody miss. But are the other skills going to catch up to that? And that's the question that I have.
And that's the difference between him and a guy like Josh Jacobs, for example, who I've seen people compare Isaiah Spiller to, who in my opinion, Jacobs was just a much more instinctual, like looked more like an NFL running back.
Sure.
Same goes for a guy like J.K. Dobbins, who initially kind of stood out to me when I first watched Spiller, but I kind of cooled down. We've kind of collectively cooled down on Isaiah Spiller at first because he was our RB1 at first watch of these dudes. Then we watched, Breece Hall a little bit more in depth, saw the athletic testing, saw the difference in athleticism between those guys, and obviously the draft capital now looks like it's going to be pretty different. So, Danny, where you have Isaiah Spiller going?
I mean, you mentioned it with your pairing. I have him here to the Atlanta Falcons 74th overall pick. I mean, at the end of the day here, if we're dealing with day 2 draft capital, we want an opportunity for volume. And if we're talking about the Atlanta Falcons, like, are they going to run back that Cordero Patterson experiment? I mean, realistically here, you still want to feature him because he was that good last year. But do I expect him to be, a full-fledged ball carrier that's getting 15, 20 rushing attempts per game? Maybe it could happen, but until then, I mean, realistically projecting a 30-plus-year-old wide receiver who, outside of last year, didn't have an exclusive experience playing the running back position on a full down-to-down capacity. We'll see how that projects. But when you're talking about Spiller, I mean, you mentioned it. The instincts are the only thing that need development, that nuance, that natural feel for playing the position. But when you're talking about feet, when you're talking about pass catching acumen, I mean, it's all there for Spiller to become an eventual 3-down running back. And I think Chris Carson's a really good example. I mean, we've seen
Mike
that
Davis, the guy he'd be replacing, is also not a bad example either.
Yeah, I mean, we saw Davis in a couple instances be and sustain top 20 level production when CMC missed time a couple years ago. I think that is the blueprint. If you can get Spiller into a situation where he can develop into a 15 to 20 opportunity per game type of back, I mean, you could be talking about a locked and loaded top 15 running back for the foreseeable future if he can develop into that role.
Yeah. So let's get off of the, perceived top 3 tier 1 or tier 1 and 2 type of running backs in this class. There's a lot. We were talking before the show that there's probably more depth in this class than there was last year. Last year, it was, the ETN, Najee Harris, Javonte Williams were the top guys. And then you had your Carters and your Sermons that were okay, but there wasn't a lot of Carters and Sermons in last year's class. There was only a couple of those guys. This year, it looks like we're going to get a lot more round 3, round 4 draft capital running backs than we got last year. I believe Sermon and Carter might have been the only 2 running backs, in Stevenson, I think, too, that went in round 3 and 4 of the NFL draft. The first guy that we have here is James Cook, running back from Georgia. He's currently going off the board about pick 88 per grinding the mocks. I actually, back to the Philadelphia Eagles landing spot, that's where I have James Cook. I think complements what you kind of already have. If they still believe in Miles Sanders, again, if they don't believe in Miles Sanders, then they might go with a guy like Breece Hall, like you kind of talked about already. But if they still want to build out like a committee type of approach, James Cook fills a role that I don't think they have a whole lot of dynamic ability in right now, which is as a pass catching running back. So I like James Cook to the Philadelphia Eagles. Sometime in the late 3rd round, they have 2. They have pick 83 in the late 3rd round, and they have a compensatory 3rd round pick. So they could address the running back position with one of those as well.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think for me, with the Eagles, it's, how do they see Kenneth Gainwell developing? That's the biggest question there. If they're going to draft a back of similar skill set, do they like Kenneth Gainwell after his rookie year? He was okay. He had a good rookie year. He had a better year than Miles Sanders did. So
yeah,
it's where do they see him developing is the big question in Philadelphia. Do they want a 3-down guy? Do they want another, secondary piece they can plug in there? For me, I have James Cook going to the Seahawks at 109. I think it makes sense to me from the perspective of Chris Carson. We don't know if he's going to be even back with his neck injury. You have Rashad Penny, who's perceivably going to be, he's going to be there last year. But I think they need another guy to take his workload off. If it's just those 2 in particular, I think they need another guy who can take his workload off and then also be a pretty viable threat as a receiver. And
it's a better Homer. It's a better version of Travis Homer.
100%. A more dynamic version of Travis Homer. Hit the nail on the head there. So I like James Cook quite a bit in terms of, his film. He had, he's a good running back. I don't know if he's ever going to get 3-down, a 3-down workload, but he's someone that in the NFL offense, like the Seahawks, they're in essentially a rebuilding phase. I would like to see him be, a 3rd down back to start his career and then potentially work his way into a more significant workload.
Yeah, I like both of those fits for both of you with James Cook. the one I actually decided upon is the team that Bush has all behind him with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I mean, you lost Ronald Jones. You're pretty. I mean, have you guys officially lost Gio Bernard, or is that just kind of?
I don't know. He wasn't very effective
I think
last
they
year.
brought him back.
I think he is back, but like he wasn't very
either-
effective. And they like to build out like a 4-stack of running back
Yeah.
typically. So we are missing a guy with Rojo gone.
So either way, I mean, even if he's back, like realistically, like we're talking about washed up Giovanni Bernard, like there's opportunity to be that ancillary secondary piece behind Leonard Fournette. Whether you want to go, the pure runner type of regard, I'm sure you'll probably get into later. I kind of opted for that guy that can take some of the food off of Leonard Fournette's plate on third down. Obviously, Leonard Fournette, he's an adept pass catcher. He's shown opportunities to work in volume in the past, but getting a more natural satellite, if you will, type of back to complement Leonard Fournette and his physical type of running style would be, that thunder and lightning aspect to your backfield. And obviously with James Cook, I mean, from a pure third down reliability standpoint, he's definitely somebody that I can see Tom Brady really, really respecting, really, really appreciating, even as soon as his rookie year.
Yeah, everyone will draw the James White comparison if he goes there. It'll be pretty easy for fantasy to see James Cook go in the mid-second round or something of rookie drafts for most people. So moving on to another guy. This one actually took me 0.2 seconds to figure out the best landing spot for. Brian Robinson from Alabama. He is currently going off the board around pick 95 per grinding the mocks. I have him going to the New Orleans Saints at pick 98. It took me like 3 seconds to figure it out. Mark Ingram is old. Alvin Kamara took way too much, punishment as like an early down runner last year. And you want to preserve that guy. He's getting paid a lot of money. He's obviously very effective in the passing game. I think what you want to do with Alvin Kamara is put him back in the role that he made so successful, where he is a satellite back that gets 8 to 10 carries a game, but that's it. You don't want him taking 18 carries up the middle every single game. And for that, you need a physical runner like Brian Robinson who can, take that early down work away from Alvin Kamara. And I mean, Brian Robinson as a prospect is a hard eval because he wasn't productive really at all until his final year, until Najee Harris went off to the NFL, until Jacobs and Damian Harris, all the guys that he was behind at Alabama went off to the NFL. But he was good this year and he was effective and he looks, like a mature NFL caliber running back. And I think being from a big school, he's going to get pretty high draft capital by the NFL standards. They're going to look at, James Cook from Georgia, Brian Robinson from Alabama, and be willing to invest in these guys as opposed to maybe some of the smaller school prospects that we're going to talk about soon.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I think, Corey, when you talk about Brian Robinson, Saints is number one. I think that's going to be, they're going to add a secondary guy there. And I think Brian Robinson fits that mold. I think Zamir White, Damian Pierce, like those guys are the three I think fit there as a secondary piece to Kamara, a clear secondary piece at that. But I also think for him, I think a really good spot for him to land is going to be the Chargers at 79. I think Eckler needs a running
similar rationale.
Yeah. I mean, similar rationale between the dynamic pass catching back who's a really good instinctual runner, but you don't want him to continue to struggle with injury and durability. I think they might add that guy early and reach on him. I mean, 79 is kind of a reach, I think, for Brian Robinson, but I think he's a better overall player than I think a lot of us are anticipating him being. I liked him. Actually, I took him in a Devy draft 3-4 years ago because one of the reasons I took him was his skill set as a receiver. And that's something he didn't show that much at Alabama, but he was a really good receiver. Good in pass protection, physical, obviously a really good between the tackles runner. He's one of those guys that's going to be, take a lot of, meat away from whoever is there on the goal line. But yeah, I think the Saints is the number one spot. I'd also like the Chargers as well.
He's kind of like Ramondre this year. He's like this year's Ramondre. He's like, underrated as a receiver, big, good athlete for his size. Brian Robinson's interesting. I think we could be looking back, a year from now and being like, hey, this guy's worth, a second round rookie pick if you want to go trade for him, like what Ramondre Stevenson is. And if he's behind, Kamara, we've seen multiple backs be productive from that system before. So, Danny, where you got him going? Is it the Chargers as well for you?
Well, I actually have a different type of, tone setting type of running back going to the Chargers. For my pick here for Brian Robinson, I have him going 83rd overall to the Eagles here. I mean, realistically here, you kind of mentioned Kenneth Gainwell, Boston Scott, you're more satellite receiving type of archetype, getting just, a physical between the tackles runner like Brian Robinson to take away some of that load from Miles Sanders. Because we kind of saw last year that they did not trust Miles Sanders. They did not trust his mistakes. They did not trust his instincts down the stretch there. Getting a more, veteran, take away the load, 15, 17 carry type of back, the way Brian Robinson could represent for this Eagles team. Third round draft capital makes a ton of sense for me. Pair him up with this offense. I mean, we saw them have a ton of rushing success last year, number one rushing offense in the league. And from a pure fantasy standpoint, realistically, Brian Robinson with the Eagles, there's a ton of touchdown opportunity there. You can't sustainably have Jalen Hurts be your only real rushing threat on the goal line. Getting a guy like Brian Robinson, a more physical, well-built type of running back to take away some of that load from, Gainwell and Scott, I think would be a perfect fit in the third round.
He'd be like a perfect best ball pick if that happened.
Yeah.
Because he's going to score like 9 rushing touchdowns in his rookie year.
A la Damien Harris.
Best ball pick.
Yeah.
Yeah. So moving on to what we would consider one of the final fringe top 100 guys. You already kind of brought him up. Zamir White from Georgia. They got 2 backs this year that I think are both probably going to go on day 2 of the NFL draft at some point. Zamir White, a guy that suffered a lot of injuries at Georgia, but tested really well. So I'm sure NFL scouts are pretty high on him just from that perspective. I have him actually going to another team that, again, similar rationale to Alvin Kamara, similar rationale to Austin Eckler, is in need of a guy to take away the early down work. I think they had, this is the New York Jets. I think they had this role in mind for Tevin Coleman last year, but as we all know, that guy is complete dog water. He's completely garbage. And Zamir White represents a little bit of a youth factor there. And he is that early down guy. He's not going to contribute a whole lot on third down. Didn't have a lot of production in that regard. They used James Cook in that regard at Georgia. And Zamir White could be that for the New York Jets. He could be the thunder to the lightning of Michael Carter. Pick 69, pick 111, pick 117. They have a lot of picks in that range of the draft that they could use on a running back. And they've also shown the ability to trade down and stuff. So if they want to, trade down to the late, 90s or something and pick Zamir White at that point, I think that would make a lot of sense for the Jets.
No, yeah, I agree with you there. I think they definitely need, another back besides Michael Carter. That's going to be important for them, especially in the red zone. For me, I have him going to the Chiefs. I think that's the one thing they don't have. They don't have the hammer. I think
he's kind of like Rojo, though. He's got a similar skill set.
Oh man, it's kind of
maybe not as mistake prone, but like the same skill set.
So I think it's funny because Edwards-Helaire is a good NFL running back, good in his own scheme, really good pass catcher who's not used there, kind of miscast. But I think Ronald Jones is, I love his physical skill set, very similar to like Miles Sanders, where the physical skill set's great, good accelerator, good top end speed. Awesome. But it's everything else between the ears, and we're talking a lot of the other things he makes mistakes on: pass protection, pass catching. I think fumbling. That's I think the biggest reason why they're going to want a secure back on the goal line, someone who can get the job done, so they don't have to do the tight end trick plays all the time that Andy Reid loves. I think they keep it simple and go Zamir White. In that 4th or 5th round, I think that's kind of the range for Zamir. But he's a good back. I think without injury, I think we're looking at a potential 2nd round pick. But he's just one of those guys. I think he's a 0 in the passing game, which is fine. But he can have 10, 12 touchdown upside in the right offense. And the Kansas City Chiefs are one of the most high octane offenses in the league.
Yeah. For my Zamir White spot, this draft capital range, forgive me, but I mean, either whether you want to peg him at 69th overall or you want to have him at 111th overall, Corey's New York Jets right there. The same comparison, the same fit. I do like a lot for Zamir White. I mean, the rationale pretty simple. You have Michael Carter as your third down satellite type of role. Zamir White can be your punishing in between the tackles runner on 1st and 2nd down. They need that type of presence. They need that type of runner. They need that type of early down contributor that, as much as I like Michael Carter, he's just not going to be suited to play that role in the NFL. So as a result, get Zamir White, run this tandem backfield, and have some fun with it.
Yeah, I agree. I think they need to. They tried to kind of pigeonhole him into that in some games last year, and he actually got hurt the game that they tried to do it. So I do think they want to use him a little bit more sparingly in the passing game, get him in the open field where he's best. Another guy that profiles as a pretty good receiver, the last of the fringe top 100 guys, according to Grinding the Mocks, is Rachaad White, running back from Arizona State, a guy that, again, we're not going in order of rankings. We're going in the order that they're being mocked in the NFL draft. So a lot of you guys might have Rachaad White ranked a lot higher than the guys we've talked about right now from a fantasy perspective. But I actually have Rachaad White. I've seen people compare him to David Johnson because the profile is kind of similar. A guy that, late in his career became a good receiving threat. I have him going to the team that drafted David Johnson in the Arizona Cardinals. And I mean, James Conner is going to be a guy that is going to carry the workload on first and second down. Rachaad White, I think he needs a lot of work as far as like instinctually as a runner. I don't think he's that developed in that area, but he is a very equipped receiver, and he was very productive as a receiver. You lost Chase Edmonds to the Miami Dolphins. You need to replace that role. So give me Rachaad White to replace the Chase Edmonds role. Give him a little bit more size as well on third down for the Arizona Cardinals, in the third, fourth round area probably.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think like no matter who goes the Cardinals, I think that it's a spot that they need a secondary back or someone to share the workload with James Conner in a 50-50 split or so. But for me, I have a guy like Rachaad White, one of the Texans. I think he has a 3-down skill set. I think he's more in the mold of Kerryon Johnson, of a guy that can carry the workload, can be the 1A, the first option in an NFL offense at the running back. Just needs some work and development and experience there. I think he has a lot of interesting qualities. He's a good receiver, not a great receiver, but I think he's good enough to command a pretty significant workload as a receiving back in the NFL. I think between the tackles, it's one of those things where he needs experience. We're not going to know what he is until he does it. So he hasn't had a lot of experience, obviously, in college. He was, sharing a workload with DeMonte Traynham, who's now a linebacker. And then early on in his career, he was a junior college kid. So he's someone that's really interesting to me. I actually have him at my RB4, above actually Isaiah Spiller on AGS. I have Isaiah Spiller higher than him on film. But I think White's an interesting back where you look at the size, the speed, the production, he checks all those boxes. So I think an NFL team's going to take a shot at him as potentially becoming a lead dog. The Texans make sense there if they don't want to spend a higher pick on those type of guys, because they'll be in the range of the Bryce Young and the CJ Stroud next year. So they might be taking a little bit more help at receiver now that they re-signed Brandon Cooks and getting besides Cooks and Nico Collins, they need a third guy or a second guy at that to have Bryce Young or CJ Stroud come in and develop as a passer in the NFL. So I think that's a good spot for White, and I think he can project into potentially a lead role in the NFL if he goes there.
2 David Johnson replacement roles. I got him to the Cardinals.
Literally,
the Texans. So
yeah.
Danny, where you got Rachaad White going?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because I was literally just going to say, you guys have both the David Johnson landing spots. Well, I'm, I guess, the decider. I guess I'm the, who am I giving the edge to? At the Arizona Cardinals as well, 87th overall pick. I mean, those are the two easiest spots to project, not just because, they're David Johnson's former spots, but you're talking about kind of in need of a receiving back. Obviously, with James Conner, we know the volatility from a health standpoint from a year-to-year basis. He's also an older back. He's going on 27 years old right now.
Short-term deal too. It's not a long-term
right. There's more risk in that deal than people want to recognize. And at least getting with Rachaad White, that for the most part, James Conner's going to handle probably about 65-70% of the work. But any type of work that Rachaad White's going to get is going to be valuable work. We saw that last year with Chase Edmonds, and who knows, 2023 and on, if Rachaad White has a good development year, feeling comfortable in an NFL system, feeling comfortable working on third down, potentially incorporating an early down rule into his game, I wouldn't be shocked if he ends up taking over the committee by 2023.
Yeah, that would make some sense. I think he needs to go to a spot like kind of we said for Spiller, where he can develop an early down skill set, because I don't think he currently has it. He's a guy I'm more so looking at in the mid-second round of rookie drafts as opposed to like the late first, early second round where I've seen him go, because the athleticism is there. The receiving skill set is there. I just need to see him develop more as a runner, get some more experience in that regard. So let's get into the day 3, guys. We'll go as many as we can get through. We'll try and wrap this thing out around 45 minutes. I want to talk about my favorite day 3 guy, and then we'll talk about Angelo's favorite day 3 guy. My favorite day 3 guy is Tyler Allgeier. He's currently my RB4 in the class right now.
Wow.
Tyler Allgeier, to me, the reason I like him is the same reason I liked Elijah Mitchell last year. It's because he has a well-rounded skill set. I think he can do everything well. I don't think he's the most laterally quick and athletic back in the class, but a 77th percentile relative athletic score, according to MathBomb, is good enough for me. My comparison for him is James Robinson. I think he's a physical runner. I think he's elusive enough. I think he can contribute enough as a receiving back. and is very, very good in pass protection as well. Probably one of the best in the class that I've watched so far. I think an NFL team is going to like that about him, and a team that needs a guy that is good in pass protection because everybody on their roster stinks in pass protection is the Kansas City Chiefs, because Clyde Edwards-Helaire stinks at it, and so does Ronald Jones. So give me Tyler Allgeier, a guy that can, like to your point, be a goal line back for that team, a consistent goal line back. He was very productive for Zach Wilson in the BYU offense the past 2 years in that role, and a guy that is going to be more consistent. And if Ronald Jones makes mistakes and if Clyde Edwards-Helaire makes mistakes, you have a reliable guy like Tyler Allgeier, who's been an experienced workhorse in the past, if they wanted to move that. And he also gives you a physical running element that I think they should have taken in 2020 with Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, no, you kind of hit the nail on the head too. I mean, I think it's important for that team to have someone that can protect the passer, which is a pretty premium passer in Patrick Mahomes, and while also pick up some of the goal line work, and that's going to be important for them short yardage situations. So for me, I had Allgeier going to the Cowboys. I think Zeke has X amount of tread left, and I think that might be Tony Pollard's backfield in the near future, and he needs a running mate. I think that might be Allgeier. He's a guy that does a lot well. I don't think he's a particularly, like enticing back in terms of talent, but I think he's someone that can give you enough to where he's a secondary back in this league for a long time, and that's okay. Who can play a lead role when he's called upon. For me, my big day 3 guy is Pierre Strong Jr. I absolutely love what I see from Pierre Strong Jr. He's on film. He's my RB3 overall in AGS. He's my RB2. For a few reasons, I think the immediate production is pretty incredible when you look at it. You're talking about a guy who had over 1,100 yards, 11 touchdowns, and averaged 9.5 yards a carry as an 18, 19-year-old freshman. Obviously, he plays in Division I AA. With the Jackrabbits of South Dakota State. But what you're looking at for smaller school guys is them to dominate. And he dominated for years. His career yards per carry is around 7.5. And he's a guy too that's a 4.37 40 guy. He's a spectacular fit in a wide zone scheme like the Atlanta Falcons. He's someone I think that can be a premier Pro Bowl type running back in the right situation, similar to how Elijah Mitchell is in the 49ers right now. I think he's pretty much in the mold of Tony Pollard, where he's going to be a guy I think that can shoulder the workload and be the focal point of an NFL offense. Good receiver, really good instincts and economy. He's just one of those guys that can hit a home run at any single play. I'm a huge fan of his game, so I'm going to be really intrigued to see where he goes and what day he lands on. I think he had such an impressive pre-draft process, especially when he was at the Shrine Bowl, the Shrine game that week. He showed his acumen as a receiver in the one-on-one drills and showing he can be an adequate pass catcher. Took a 60+ yard screen to the house during that game too. So he showed he belonged athletically amongst some other athletes that are pretty solid. So for me, man, I'm just looking forward to seeing where he gets drafted. I think he can go anywhere from round 3 to round 5. But I'm hoping it's round 3 in my case. So, but yeah, I think he's one of those guys, kind of like Elijah Mitchell last year, when you're projecting a guy that can be, obviously Elijah Mitchell's perfect storm, Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson goes down. You're that third guy. Trey Sermon was hurt too. I hope that he goes to a situation, Strong goes to a situation that he can succeed right away and kind of show the talent he has.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely love that. I'll get into my comp for a second, but for the record, with Allgeier, I had paired with the Miami Dolphins. I mean, similar thing. You can't really trust upon Raheem Mostert to handle that full early down type of role. Obviously, Chase Edmonds is kind of pigeonholed into that third down type of role, getting, a bigger physical back that can really complement this McDaniel scheme. I think Allgeier can do to a T. 102nd overall makes a ton of sense for Allgeier. In terms of Pierre Strong, you kind of mentioned before we started recording about Tony Pollard, and I think that he would be, pending draft capital, I don't know exactly where he's going to end up going. For purpose sake, it says a 154.3. Let's just say hypothetically that was the range. So Dallas Cowboys, 155th overall pick. I mean, he does have that Tony Pollard type of skill set. You have, you just add a lot more dynamic ability, dynamic breakaway ability in this backfield by adding Pierre Strong. That when Pollard was banged up last year, when Pollard was dealing with the little injuries at the middle of the season mark, Zeke doesn't have that breakaway ability anymore. Point simple. You take Pierre Strong 5th round. He could be your RB3 right of the way. And we kind of saw that the RB3 in Dallas did get some snaps at times, but more so this is an insurance piece if Pollard were to miss time. Or if Zeke missed any time, guess what? You have 2 dynamic breakaway threats on what should be one of the most dynamic offenses in the NFL. Also a ton of scoring opportunity, might I add. Pierre Strong, sleeper. Not the Angelo, because he's super high on him as well. But for the most part, for the general community, they don't realize how electric this back is. And in a situation like Dallas, where he can, take his time, learn behind Pollard, learn behind Zeke, and then ultimately still have that breakaway ability to contribute when he's called upon, you can't ask for much more than, what should figure into the 3rd round of your rookie drafts.
Yeah, Angelo's making me want to watch some Pierre Strong film, so I might need you to link me some full Jackrabbit games. Facts. Because there is literally no film on planet Earth that I can find for Pierre Strong.
But he looks great on paper.
Fun. His profile looks so awesome on paper. Aside from the small school, and the fact that he's a bit older, he looks really good on paper. So I really like that for Pierre Strong. Hopefully he becomes one of these sleeper backs that emerges out of round 3, round 4, round 5 of the NFL draft, and becomes a very productive guy. Speaking just quickly on your Dallas Cowboys landing spot, I actually have Zonovan Knight going there. Bam Knight, to me, has pound for pound the best feet in this entire class. I think he's the most elusive back in the class. When you watched him run the bag drills at the combine, Daniel Jeremiah just goes, wow, that was outstanding. On the thing. The guy has Cam Akers' feet. He doesn't have Cam Akers' athleticism, and he doesn't have a lot of other things like Cam Akers, but he has very, very good elusiveness. And I like Bam Knight to be the succession plan to Tony Pollard, because Tony Pollard is coming up on his contract. So he could be the new Tony Pollard a couple of years from now in that offense. So that's where I have, as far as the Dallas Cowboys. Let's go one more time around the horn. One more day 3 guy that you like the landing spot of. I actually like Tyler Beatty to the Denver Broncos to be the 3rd down guy there, because Javonte Williams, as much as I love him, as much as I think he'll be a 3-down workhorse, they can't have nobody behind him. They can't have it's malpractice in the NFL to think that you can rely on any running back to be a full workload guy and last as the duration of his rookie contract with just him in that backfield. So give me a guy that can contribute as a pass catcher, just as a pure satellite back. Beatty tested pretty well. He was kind of like the anti-Kyron Williams from that perspective. So pick 96, pick 115, pick 116. They have a lot of picks in that range. I think that's when they're going to address the running back position, whether it is, a pass catching type like Tyler Beatty, whether they want to go with a more physical guy like Dameon Pierce or somebody like that. I really like Beatty to the Broncos in the 4th round sometime.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all. Tyler Beatty's an interesting back. Analytically, dude is off the charts.
Yeah.
Had a really good season last year in the SEC at that. But yeah, for me, my day three back is going to be Keontae Ingram to the Jets. I'm a huge Keontae Ingram fan. I think when he was at Texas, he was one of the better backs in the nation, actually. Exactly. There you go. That's right. I forgot you're a Horns fan. But yeah, I think he's one of those guys that's not getting enough buzz. He's one of those backs that he's 3-down skill set, really good receiver and he played at Texas at 235 pounds too. Slimmed down when he went to USC, and I think he weighs around 215 to 220 right now. But he also tested pretty well. He's a guy who ran around 4.5 flat, has the receiving chops, good in pass protection, good inside zone runner, has a really intriguing lateral skill set for a bigger back. And that's what really pops with him on tape is he can make a lot of guys miss in open space. Has a pretty broad toolbox in terms of bandwidth. I like him a lot. And I think that he's going to be a day 3 steal. I think he's a day 2 talent. But I think he's going to be a day 3 steal for a team. He can go anywhere from I'd say probably round 5 to undrafted. So that's kind of the interesting thing is I think he has a little bit of James Robinson esque in him in terms of that. I think he's a late round guy that can be a steal in that sense. So yeah, I'm interested to see, where he goes. He kind of reminds me of, in terms of style, kind of like an Alex Collins type back, where he's one of those guys that can hold down the fort, I guess, and be that dude in the NFL offense. With the Ravens, I think Alex Collins actually did pretty well before he got hurt.
Top 20 back.
But yeah, and so I'm a big fan of Ingram's. I think he's especially in dynasty drafts, fourth round, fifth round. I mean, take your shot if he goes to a good offense. So I'm excited about him, man, and see what he can do in the preseason.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly say about this class is that, like, once you get to like the 207, 208 range, like we kind of did it in some mock drafts, it's just take
Spin
the
a
guy that
wheel
you
and
believe
pick
in.
a player.
Like, just
Right.
take the guy that you think is talented. And I mean, he's got as good a chance as anybody to end up being a contributing asset on your fantasy team. I'm going to quickly say two names because I guess on the first wraparound, I forgot to say my own because I was too busy talking about your guys' ones. But for my first one, I mean, you're talking about a physical tone setter. You're talking about a guy that can contribute on the early downs, can grind out some yards, tough yards that you don't want Austin Eckler taking. Los Angeles Chargers, 123rd overall, I think would be a perfect spot for Dameon Pierce. That lack of a game that we've seen from Kelly, we've seen from, I mean, Justin Jackson's more so in your Austin Eckler profile anyways. Larry Roundtree, like all those guys are Jags. At least with Dameon Pierce, you're just recycling. You're recycling that dart throw. You're taking another chance. 4th round draft capital for a guy that showed a physical edge in college at Florida. So I think 123rd overall makes a ton of sense for Dameon Pierce.
One of the more elusive backs in the class on a per touch basis too, which is sneaky about him.
And the other one I have here, I mean, you talked about James Cook to the Seahawks. I actually had Kyron Williams to the Seahawks, same type of role. Yep. You put him on 3rd down. You're hoping he's a better version of Travis Homer to really complement, that 1st and 2nd down ability of Rashad Penny. Getting a guy who, let's be honest, like Kyron Williams giving his testing, he's going to have to make his hay in the passing game as a natural adept pass catcher on 3rd downs because realistically, that's what his profile would indicate at this point. Given his speed, given his size, he has to be a satellite back to work in the NFL. His range of outcomes went from lead back, potential, every down type of back before the combine to like a James White type of role, which if you landed in a James White type of role with Seattle, who's missing that presence on 3rd down currently, I think would be perfect for him. So talking about 4th, 5th, 6th round, whatever his expected draft capital is, I think that would be the ideal spot for Kyron.
Yeah, that's actually where I put Pierre Strong, by the way. It was the Seattle Seahawks as a cursory role. Like we have Penny on a 1-year deal, Chris Carson injury prone, 1 year, be a 3rd down back or a change of pace back for the first year and then maybe take over the workload going forward. So 2 more guys that we just didn't talk about that I just want to get your thoughts on because some of them have cult followings randomly. Like there is some people very high on Kevin Harris. He wasn't actually on this list because he's not going very high in the actual draft and the mock drafts and stuff. What did you think about Kevin Harris, and does he have any kind of upside? Because I wrote his draft guide write-up for BDG. Nick Ercolano had me write some write-ups for him, and I saw a jag. I didn't think he had a whole lot of juice, a whole lot of lateral agility. He tested, okay for his size. He's a big back, but what were your thoughts on Kevin Harris from South Carolina?
I mean, very linear-driven runner. I mean, I don't know if he's going to ever catch on to a significant role in the league. The durability issues is what really, I guess, worries me with bigger backs. Like if you're a bigger back and you're not durable, then, you can't shoulder the heavy workload. And that's really important from a volume perspective when you're talking about those bigger guys. That's what you want, right? You want the volume with those guys. Like James Robinson, bigger back, did a great job his rookie year with that workload. Was a good pass catcher, but I think with a guy like Kevin Harris, like with Harris, it's more so like he's probably going to be a UDFA or 7th round guy, which is okay, but I don't know if he's going to be a needle mover in the NFL. That's kind of my fear, and with the durability issues, I don't see a big lateral skill set with him. Everything's pretty linear. He's a good college back, but I think that's kind of where it stops.
I didn't even think he was that good of a college back, to be honest. I saw like my comp for him was Larry Roundtree. Like speaking of Larry Roundtree, like I just don't think I just didn't see like he tested a lot better than I thought. Like I was like this guy was slow and like a jag on tape. The last guy that I want to get your thoughts on, because I think we've pretty much covered every running back in this class, is Jerome Ford, because he does have a little bit of he went to not a big school, but like a team that did very well this year in Cincinnati. I had him actually going to the Dolphins. Like I did match him up with somebody. So what are your thoughts on Jerome Ford? I kind of saw a similar type of player, a guy that is more of like a linear runner that has like home run speed. He was expected to test, really, really well coming into the combine. ran a solid time, but not like anything crazy. People were like, oh, this guy might crack, like 4 threes or something like that.
Yeah, no, he was a track star, man. He was an Alabama guy too. So he's a transfer from Alabama to Cincinnati. So I think he's an interesting one because I think he's going to be a wide zone threat in the NFL. I think fits the Dolphins mold of what they want. I would also love Pierre Strong there because Raheem Mostert, phenomenal back. I mean, if he's healthy, he's 1,000+ yard guy.
Does Strong have Raheem Mostert like comp in his range of outcomes? Because he kind of size wise and speed wise seems pretty similar.
Raheem Mostert has rare speed, and he's a 10-2 guy in the 100, 20.6 guy in the 200, rare speed at the position. We're gonna see a guy next year in the Von A chain.
Yes,
Spiller's running mate's got some speed.
Who's an absolute
he's
burner.
So much fun.
But I mean, that's a different type of speed than what most NFL running backs have. Pierre Strong has, I would say, like 90th percentile speed for the position. We're talking 99th percentile speed for Raheem Mostert. Yeah. Jerome Ford is kind of in that same mold. I think he has the best top end speed in this class, the position actually, which at running back doesn't matter too much. But in a scheme that's pretty advantageous to getting your guys in open space, like the Dolphins are likely to have in the next couple of years, I think that's a really good fit for him. But again, he's a guy who can go from round 4 to undrafted. So the range of outcomes are pretty vast. I think it's going to be, does a team see him filling that role and remaining durable and filling it well?
Yeah. One last guy, and then we will get out of here, just because I just thought of this, because he's probably going to go undrafted. I don't think this guy's going to get drafted, but the one guy I want to keep an eye on, just because he's intriguing. He was a very productive freshman at a huge school like Ohio State. Master Teague tested so well at his pro day.
Huge too.
Yeah, and he's a brick shithouse. Like, this guy is massive. Dude. Like, obviously, when you have to make so many excuses for why a guy wasn't productive, he was behind J.K. Dobbins, and then he was behind Trey Sermon, and then he was behind this guy and that guy, and whatever his name is, Travion Henderson. Like, when you have to make that many excuses for a guy, he's probably not that good, and the injuries obviously are a concern for him too. But is he a good 4th round dart throw? Because I think he's a guy that I think 4th round of your rookie drafts, say he gets picked in the 7th round, goes UDFA to a good team or something like that. He's a guy that I'm probably going to throw a dart at.
Sure, I'd ever take my shot at Keontae Ingram in the 4th round. I think you can take your pick between those two guys. I'd ever take the guy who's actually showed it, especially the receiving skill set. That's the biggest thing. You're looking at if you're looking in the 4th round of rookie drafts, finding a good runner's okay, but good runners need good value.
Right.
At that stage in your rookie drafts, I think
without an injury and draft capital, you're probably not going to get it.
Yup. With Ingram, you want the receiving upside, that type of workload, who shows the multidimensional skill set. Master Teague is going to be I think he's just a guy, man.
But fair enough.
He's okay, but
my ears perked up when I saw the picks and the athletic testing. I'm like, maybe this is a guy that we need to pay attention.
Yeah. I mean, athletically, I think that's a big. I mean, he's huge. I mean, he's a big dude. I mean, you said it. But I don't know, man. I'm not looking to draft him in my rookie drafts. I'd rather take the swing at Ingram in the 4th round, and I have Ingram actually pretty high because I think he's a high risk, high reward guy. But yeah, I'd rather take the swing at Ingram, and you'll probably Pierre Strong, if he falls to the 5th round, you can probably get him in the 4th round of your rookie draft. So I'd rather take a swing at both those two guys.
The last thing I'll say, and it's two things. First of all, I mean, the problem with Master Teague is, I mean, if you're talking about just straight production in the receiving game, like Keontae Ingram, 25+ reception type of back, Master Teague, 11 total receptions in his career.
Yeah, that's bad.
That's especially for a guy who's 23 years old now. Like, that's a little sketch. But
I saw the pick on Twitter. I got excited. I'm like, maybe somebody likes him, because like nobody does. It's like if you ask somebody if they like CJ Verdell still, like nobody likes that guy either. They were once productive freshmen that we were excited about, and that was pretty much it.
The last player I'm going to ask about is I had to rep my Michigan Wolverines. I had to rep the tone setters around the world. But what are your thoughts on Hassan Haskins?
Productive. I think that's the one thing I can the number one thing that comes to mind is productive. He produced he was actually pretty damn good when you watched that Michigan team. Is he an NFL athlete? And will he get drafted is the question. Those are the two questions I have. And I think the answer to both of those might be no. Is he a good collegiate running back? Yeah. Damn good. Is he tough, physical? Yep. Is he going to be that guy on NFL field? That's the question I don't have the answer to, but we'll find out if he's a UDFA, then you kind of know that he's just, he's just a dude. But yeah, this class is pretty deep with those dudes though. You know what I'm saying?
There's like four guys we could still bring up. We could still talk about Kennedy Brooks. We could still talk about Ty Chandler. We could still talk. Sorry, what did you say?
Tyler Goodson.
Tyler
Goodson, Brian Kopak. There's a lot of guys.
The Ole Miss back, Stu Connor, and Jerry and Ely. Like, there's a lot of dudes.
A lot of dudes, man.
Yeah, who's Andre White. There's still like it's crazy how many backs in this class. It's really all going to come down to draft capital with these guys, because I think we're going to see running backs galore on day 3 of the draft, because I think there's just a lot of
there's a lot of decent ones,
round kind of talents in this class.
Sure.
Yeah. So, thanks for joining us, Angelo. As always, we like to get your insight. Tell everyone again where they can find your work, and I believe you're doing your Y series again with the top prospects. So I don't know if any of those are free to read for those people that want to check those out as well.
Yeah. First, thanks for having me again. I really appreciate it, guys. Thank you for reaching out. But yeah, you're right. The Y series is it's begun. So we're in week 5 now. So each week is a free profile. So this week's was Treylon Burks. So his is still free until the end of the day, until I upload the George Pickens one, and that one's going to be free. The Pickens one's going to be free probably around 4 or 5 p.m. Central today. So that's kind of what I'm looking at there. And then Pierre Strong Jr. is uploaded today. All the major players in this class in terms of running back, receiver are uploaded on AGS and their profiles on Angel Analysis. So yeah, man, I'm excited. It's just a fun time of year. We have less than 20 days to the NFL draft, so I'm really looking forward to watching my Chicago Bears mess it up again. So
hey, we're going to be live for the draft. If you're not doing anything when the Bears are on the clock, we might pop you in here on. They don't pick until day 2, right? So we can.
You might not want me in
the 48 overall.
Hey, who's the?
I think it's 39th.
39th, that's it.
39th. Okay. Who's the doomsday pick if they pick somebody at 39 that you're like
doomsday?
Yeah.
Oh God, if they take Christian Watson, I'm gonna be pissed.
I actually had.
I'll be honest. I'll be very upset. I would. I mean, I'll only be upset if it's like Christian Watson and George Pickens both on the board and they choose Watson. I'll be so upset. I'll be so upset. I'll be unconsolably upset.
Yeah,
my quote unquote dream 2nd round pick. Like at the beginning of the offseason,
you're never getting Sky Moore. You're not going to get Sky Moore
at the beginning of the offseason. It looked potentially decently reasonable, but now I gotta let hope.
I think he's a first round pick.
I think he's going to go in the top 40 for sure.
Yeah, he's a stud.
His floor. Well, his absolute floor would be what, like the Giants, like
yeah.
Oh, yeah,
my doomsday is that the Bucs pick
Christian
Watson too.
Yeah,
Sterling Shepard mold.
Yeah. I mean,
the Bucs got small school receivers. I'm scared they're going to pick Christian Watson at 27.
I hope so.
Oh, I'd be okay with it. Actually, scared. I don't care. Hey, you take him off the board for the Bears.
I don't want him on the board.
Anyway, it's fine.
All that mumbo jumbo aside, again, appreciate you for coming on. Your Twitter's on the screen. They can check out your work. I need to get you to link me some South Dakota State film in the DMs.
Yeah.
If you guys enjoyed this video, as always, like the video, comment any of your thoughts down below, what your favorite fit was of the video, maybe somebody that we didn't talk about. I don't know if that's possible because we talked about pretty much every running back in this class. Subscribe to the channel if you are new as well. Again, we're trying to get to 10,000 subs by the NFL draft. We got about 18 days or so to get there. Also, check out underdogfantasy.com, promo code FSE. They are official sponsor of this channel. We'll get you 100% match back on whatever you put in. $50 on the site. You'll get $100 to play with. As a thank you for that, you'll also get our Dynasty Rankings Manifesto with our rookie rankings, Superflex, 1 quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, bucketed rankings by age. That'll all be free to you for using our code over on Underdog Fantasy. If you haven't already signed up yet, go ahead and do that. And again, Patreon listed in the description as well for any other Dynasty rankings and needs that you might have. So with that being said, peace out, guys. We'll talk to you soon.